we'll see with the athletic population is pain and limitation with hip flexion and internal rotation. So we'll work on some mobilizations, some like the most basic ones we could do to improve that. So for example, if when we took Daniel up and he had pain here or a restriction here, then this is where we know his initial range of motion is at. Our goal is to do different interventions to see if we can improve his hip flexion or whatever we're trying to work on. But if we're not pre-testing, doing an intervention and then coming back to retesting in the same exact way, we really don't know if our intervention is working. So every time we want to do an intervention, make sure if it doesn't work, that's fine. We have a backup hopefully, and then we know that that thing we thought was going to be helpful but isn't, just scrap it and find another one. So one of the common ones we'll do is a Mulligan belt mobilization. If someone's never had this before, it may feel weird or uncomfortable, so educate them. We're just gonna wrap the belt around my hips, we're gonna wrap it around your leg, and then go through some stretching. If someone hasn't had this and they might get uncomfortable, we can put a towel or some type of cushion in between. Switch over towards me. I usually try to keep the belt as close to the joint line as possible in order to create the most amount of change. And then from here, if we wanted to just do holds and hang out, that's fine. Some people just prefer to do holds. Most of my interventions are going to be more movement based, but this is a great way to start, just get people feeling lateral distraction. Same thing can be done inferior to tolerance. If he has pain with end range hip flexion, I'm not going to crank him in an end range hip flexion. I'm just going to take him into a spot that feels okay. So in a slightly hinged position, I might just scooch over more. The more he scooches over, the better my line of drive can be with an inferior distraction. And then it could just be a hold. But for me, most of the time, I'm going to be doing something a little bit more movement based. So I can just take him in hip flexion here. The more points of contact I have, then the more secure he's going to feel. So I'm hinged from my hips, the belt is pulling him inferior, but I also have several points of contact. So my elbow and my ribs are holding his shin, under my hand is holding his popliteal fossa, and then my other hand is stabilizing to make sure he's going in the same exact position as our testing position. So hinge, 1, 2, 3, 4 points of contact, and then go. And then you want to communicate with him throughout the whole time. Is this painful? If so, when? Anything? If you feel him starting to guard, you could back off how much pressure you're applying with the distraction. If he's fine, then great, keep going. Try to find his true end range. If hip flexion, you feel like it's starting to clear up and his range of motion is starting to improve, then you could start taking him into other positions. So maybe you want to start getting him into a little bit more horizontally adducted position, if he can tolerate that. If not, this might be a very pain-provoking position, so just something to be aware of. And then same thing, a slightly horizontally abducted or E-yard position. Those would all be flexion-based, and we could do IR-based, still keeping all my points of contact. Try to keep them as relaxed as possible, and then we could take them in IR. I'm trying to keep his knee stabilized directly over his hip the whole time. Rotate, reset. Same thing, you really want to make sure that it's not uncomfortable for the patient. Any pinching, pain here. If there was, I would just adjust his range of motion. So if he had pain with anything greater than 15 degrees IR, then don't go to 15 degrees. Just go 0 to 10. And as he starts to get more comfortable with it, then we can start getting into more range of motion. Another one we can do, circumduction. Take him in hip flexion, ER, bring him back to neutral. Keeping all my points of contact. The goal is to make it relatively easy for us, so if we're struggling, which takes time, just the more reps you get, the easier you'll get. But if it's really hard for us, then it's going to be hard for the patient to relax. After our intervention, pop it off, retest, see if we made any change. Flexion, IR, here. If they improved, good. Put that in your archive, put that in your flow sheet. and then keep that going moving forward. If it didn't improve or got worse, then we can figure out, is it technique based, is it something you did wrong, or something you can do better, or is it just not a good intervention for this patient. Dosaging, I usually don't count reps or sets or anything like that. If it's starting to improve, I'll keep going. If it plateaus, I know that's the most I got of that exercise for the day. Questions?
Seems like a joint disruption.
Yeah.